Hey everybody, and Happy New Year! In this podcast, because the new year starts, we want to talk about goal setting. Mark, have you set your goals already? Because I have.
Hell yeah! You know it. We sat down on the 31st. We did our yearly review, reviewing all the date, what we did, what we wanted to achieve, and then we wrote down partially already our goals for the next year, and we finished that yesterday. So we are already
Exactly.
set. Do you guys have already a routine?
You better have. If not, don't worry about it. Listen to the podcast, and maybe you can learn one or two things and then implement it, because it's still early in the year. So, Mark, you want to get started? How do you set your goals?
Oh, hell yeah. All right, let's go a little bit into the rough sketch. So, first of all, for me, I categorize these things. So, I have a category that is for me health and fitness.
Yeah.
Then I have one that is languages, for me Spanish, because I want to learn Spanish. Then I have also something that is for education. So that means if I want to learn something cool new that is not, I don't know, language related. So for me right now, I want to learn more about AI tools, etc. And then I have one that's businesses and podcasts. So these are the 5 things that I have. So it's Spanish, the business, and then the podcast, then health and gym, and then education. How
Awesome.
about you?
So, first of all, yes. I mean, I have, of course, like language, so Spanish. I want to go to C1. Then, of course, health and fitness, gym, business, and podcast. These are the main goals. But I want to also go more into detail because, like, yes, you write down these goals, but I want to go more into detail, like how I'm doing it. For example, let's take, for example, podcast. All right,
Yeah.
because I think it's like what a lot of people do is they write down goals and then they never accomplish them, right? Because like they don't get reminded of it every day. They don't review it. So, for example, if
Yes,
things
they're starting
change,
tomorrow.
exactly. No, Monday. Gym opens Monday. Let's go to Monday to the gym again. So the thing is, what most people struggle with, they write them down, and then it's already like October, November till I realize, oh my god, I didn't accomplish any of my goals. So like for this, like I personally, or what we do every 3 months, we always revise our goals. So for example, we set goals for the year, and then every 3 months we do reviews. So, but important for these reviews are also that you always just like, first of all, keep reminded so that you have them. For example, if we have like our metrics for our podcast, we put it like, I write down on paper and then put it on a glass, like on the window, and then I see it daily.
All right. So I want to go into detail. I mean, I categorized already into the 5 categories. I want to give
Yeah.
you guys an example on Spanish. So how I define my goal in Spanish. So first of all, I do current status. What's the current status? So for me, in this example, I have a B2. I did an exam. It was an online exam. So I have a link in here in this document as well. I say, hey, I'm looking for words and conversations. I'm slow with jokes. I cannot explain complex topics. This is my current situation. Then I write down the goal. All right, I want to be able to joke around without struggling, and I want to understand 98% of the topics. Then, okay, how do I measure this? Because it doesn't
Man,
matter
that's a
if you have a
specific
goal if you
number,
can't measure it.
89%.
98, bro. Well, of
98, sorry.
course. Gotta be specific. We're specific.
That's
We're
true.
German. So then obviously it doesn't matter if you can't measure it, it doesn't count, right? So the next
Yeah.
one is feel smooth in conversation. That is something that is not very scientific, but you get the vibe. You feel like you're smooth and you know this when you get into the zone. Then understand podcasts completely because right now sometimes I'm guessing for words. And then a Spanish test again. This is something that is really measurable. C1. I want to achieve C1. So it's an online test. I already have the link in there. Okay, this is how to measure. Then I go into more details on my current weaknesses because how do I achieve this? What's this current status? Why am I not achieving the C1 yet? So I broke it down into the specific topics. In my case, is vocabulary, speaking, understanding. So obviously, this depends on what the goal is. Obviously, language is based on these 3 things. I broke it down into further ones of vocabularies, just like I assume words, etc. Speaking, grasping for words, understanding is like understand some accents I have
Right, so
troubles
you go
with.
more into detail. So you
And when
go very
people
into
talk
detail.
fast. Exactly.
So I mean,
I
then
go very, very into detail, and then let me finish up. And then I wrote down after this, I write down how to improve this, right? So
yeah. So the
end of the
measurable
day, what I want
steps.
to is I want to crystallize the habit. Exactly,
Yeah.
measurable steps, and then I break this down into tiny habits. So
Yeah.
basically, how to improve
me a
it is
tiny
just like,
habit.
hey, write more articles. Exactly, read more articles. How to improve document, write everything down, watch movies, etc. And then I have
Or
a tiny habit thing, which is like, yeah, go ahead.
whenever you go to the bathroom, go to conjugato, instead of like scrolling to Instagram,
Yes.
do like 10 conjugations. That's a great habit, for example. So
Exactly. But this is where I was getting at, Lucas. So this after this, I go down to the tiny habit, right? So then it's just like the micro habits. It's just like, hey, when I go to the washroom, instead of going Instagram, I open Conjugato. I open Duolingo. I have my morning routine, etc. But this is first on I have the theory, then what are the
oh wait,
practice steps, and then how is the actual implementation?
Max, but how, like, we are quite disciplined. So how does somebody get started with it if he has no idea how to create a habit, right? Because I don't think most of the people are as disciplined as we might be. So how could they start? I mean, I could also just give an example, but yeah, what does the what are the books tell you or
Well,
experience?
the books say that you usually need a couple of days, 60 days usually to start a routine.
66, yeah.
And it's usually much better. It's usually much better if you replace a habit instead of creating something completely new. You replace it, and then you have a constant reminder of doing this. And you start with something super small. So, for example, if you want to do in this one book, they said, I think it was in Tiny Habits, he wanted to start actually flossing his teeth.
Yeah,
So his goal was just like, hey, he had the floss directly next to the toothbrush, and then every time he just started with one tooth, and at some point he worked himself up to do all the flossing. So these are the things. You start small, you break down the habit basically into something super small that takes, I don't know, very short time, 10 seconds, not even. So you can
yeah,
always do it. Then you always have a trigger that reminds you of doing this thing. And this is why it's so
exactly.
important. This is why we have a morning routine. You wake up every morning, unless you don't wake up, and then you don't have any problems because you did. So you wake up, you start the routine exactly. You go out, we listen to podcasts, I do my Spanish, etc.
Get some
Also,
sunlight
good
in.
to have exactly nighttime routines, but nighttime routines I don't have them very much. I want to start one because the nights always end differently,
Yeah,
so
I mean,
I
but
feel like it's hard to
it's
have the
hard to
same.
find like the trigger point, right? So I mean, for example, I mean, for night habits, I actually have one. So before going to bed, I just roll myself out with like a massage ball, like a really hard one. Like it, because it
Hmm.
relaxes my back, and then I just like triggers my mind, like, all right, time to go to bed. So that works for me. Morning routine as well. But I want to go in more in like goal setting now. For example, for the podcast, right? Because I set it up into like 4 categories. So first, I want to do like, what will I
Hmm.
do? Then a floor goal, a ceiling goal, and an anti goal. All right. So, for example, what will I do? I was like, hey, every week we will release
Mm.
one episode, right? Minimum one episode every Tuesday. It doesn't matter if we're in hospital, anything. Tuesday is always release day. We always, because Tuesday is Wednesday. All right. So always release on Tuesday, at least one episode. I will create shorts per episode. And I want to get this year, for example, 10 guests on a podcast. And now my floor goals are, for example, I want to reach by the end of the year 500 subscribers. So right now we have like, I think 51 on Spotify, right? So slowly but surely, I would say, hey, this is the floor, the minimum, which with which I would be happy. And then like the ceiling goal is like, all right, the maximum was like what I think is actually achievable. And I say like say 5,000, right? Because Mark and I are
Hmm.
also starting a new
Yeah.
project, but we love doing podcasts because we really like sharing the learnings that we're doing on our way, and the interesting topics that we're doing. And then of course now of course you're probably asking, what is an anti goal? So an anti goal is like, because like for example, even if I would achieve all these things, if that means I would need to sacrifice all the other things I'm doing, it's not worth it. So for example, my anti goal that I wrote down on the podcast is, if I spend additionally more than like 5 to 10 hours like on not editing, not on like capturing like the recording the podcast, but on editing, etc., then it's not worth it, right? Because it's like, even though I achieved these things, I didn't want to do it because I just want to spend like quickly like record it, then edit an hour or two, and then I'm done, right? Because I don't want to like spend too much time on it, because I
Hmm.
rather focus it on like our new project, but I like it on the side. So I think this is really, really important if you break down your goals in like, how will I achieve it, floor goal, ceiling goal, and anti goals, because that way I like it helped me for at least.
So I like the range also. It's super interesting. I mean, I'm very specific. So the thing is, it's a hit or miss. It's a binary thing. But if you have a
Exactly.
range, you can fall in between those things, right? So it makes it a little bit easier. And then you can like, hey, I'm in the range. So you have also not the I get it. I like it. I like it. Because the realistic is just like, hey, this could be an optimal. Otherwise, you fall into either you set your goals too short, too small, or too big.
Yeah.
And then you're going to be either disappointed or you're not achieving the maximum that you could.
I mean,
And
for
if you have the
example,
floor goal and then the dream outcome,
in the Spanish,
makes
all right,
sense.
for example, in the Spanish one, right? So you're taking the Spanish test and they're for like seeing your level, right? And the maximum score you can have is 50, right? You did what right now? 70, 37, something like this, or 38. So with the
39.
floor, you can just like, all right, I want to have from at least 42 till 49, 47, something like this, right? So that you have a range. So it's not like just because you could still move towards it because like you need to as a minimum like the floor goals, what would you be happy, what is the minimum goal you'll be happy with, right? And then of course the top is like, man, fucking amazing. So that's why I really like that one. And yeah, that's basically
So
it
I
for
like
me.
these, but you're not.
Mhm.
You're still missing. You're still missing for me, which I like prefer in mine. The go-to, right? You just say, all right, goal setting, arrange, but you're missing the call to action, right? How do you actually achieve this?
No, that's
Which
that's
I think
that's what I said.
is nice the
I
way I
said
have it.
that. I
Yeah.
said like, what will I do, right? So
Mhm.
every week I release one episode. So we're talking about that one. The triggers. I'm
Yeah.
not talking about triggers because in that point of time, I was like, I have a strict deadline, so I know every Tuesday it needs to be released. So it doesn't matter which day it is. I can lose whatever, but a Tuesday needs to happen. So that way, I basically putting myself a deadline because I think putting myself a deadline for anything is really important. Um, for example, also like you could do daily reminders, right? For example, for your goals or your weekly goals. So you can just set a Slack bot, which always sends you a message or reminder every week. Hey, these are the goals you want to achieve. You want to grow your company by 15%. What have you done so far? So you always be reminded of it. And I think it's really, really cool and really important. But yeah, also, I like having
I like
models.
it.
I also like having models for like a year. So maybe, for example, I take quotes from anime, right? So, for example, "Never giving up is my magic." So this refers to, for example, Asta um, from Black Clover. It's just like in general, because in the end, you have to see what works best for you, right? So, for example, if in or maybe live life without any regrets, hey, find your own motto and like live by it, right? Because in the end, you need to be happy with yourself. And then, of course, set your goals.
It's
How
getting
about you, Mark?
philosophical.
Hey, I'm just talking about my own goal setting,
Well,
which I think is really, really important that each finds their own way. What are your thoughts, Mark?
well, I agree. I think in general, I like the having mottos or things to live by. I mean, it's in general having values that you stick by. That's why these are super good. For example, I have a daily routine as well where you write down in the morning. It's like, hey, I am grateful for, I am, etc. Then you
Grateful
basically
journey,
remind
or what is it
yourself the
called?
core values.
What is it called again?
It's called a five
Um,
minute journal, but
yeah,
yeah, but mine's called 5 minute journal, but it's also I think there's called gratitude
gratitude.
journals as
Yeah,
well.
gratitude journey. That
So,
was the one.
anyways, exactly. These are amazing and super cool, and basically the same as you're talking about. Instead of constantly reading one phrase, is also
Yeah,
perfect because sometimes your character is well, more complex than just one phrase, right? It's just usually one aspect of yourself.
yeah,
Like never giving up. Yes, it's amazing, it's great, but it never, well, usually doesn't cover all the
yeah. Of
facets of
course,
your
that's
life.
why you have
So,
multiple.
anyway, so I like this.
This brings me up about
Exactly,
another
exactly. So I like that.
strategy for people who are more visual, right? So, for
Yeah.
example, if you wanna like vision boards, right? So, for example, like visualize. So you basically you just like get images. For example, hey, I want to achieve this and this and this, and then you just like create images like, let's say a PowerPoint, you have a slide there, and you just put like all the images on there. What do you want to achieve? I want to have this house, right? Or something like this. So you can also just like visualize it because like people learn differently and remember things differently. Imagine you're just like more visual than just reading. So that way you
Mm.
can also imagine it, right? Because in the end, if you are like same what they always say, imagine you have a camera team with you, right? And they're filming right now your early days of success, right? So always behave that way. But at the same time, you can also just like picturing already what you want to achieve and your goals. So like visualizing it, which makes it then easier or feels like you always have achieved it, and then you move forward to it. So I also like a different strategy
Yeah.
that you can do.
I actually talk about goal settings. I saw a video this morning about, I don't know, it was this guy on Instagram. He's working with Chris X together on the Newtonic drink. Anyway, he's
Yeah,
talking about breaking down goals super tiny so that you can achieve, instead of, he said, like, it was a weight loss example. Hey, you have 30 kilos to lose. Don't set your goal for 30. So don't set it for 15. Don't set it to 10, 25, just one, and then 30 times one. So you get to celebrate 30 times
yeah,
versus only one time large. So this way you have this feeling of success. It's psychological, right? You feel like, oh my God, I achieved this. Yes. And then you get the next one and you get hungry for the next one. So breaking it down to a smaller piece also doesn't feel so overwhelming, because 30 kilos, for example, seems seems a lot. But if you have
yeah.
one, and this is something on a regular basis you can achieve within a week, two weeks probably. So it's not that bad.
Man, that's why
So I think I
also
like
like
this, breaking it down to smaller pieces.
that's why also like for example, in my routines, for example, like my morning routine when I do my Spanish or do my walks, I have like a tiny box like of the day, and then just do like tick tick. So you already have a victory, right? Because in the end, it's about just like ticking a box, like, oh, I did my morning routine. You get that little victory, which is like Mark mentioned as well, because like it's not about like losing 30 kilos, but just like 30 times 1 kilo. So it's the same with like learning language. It's like 365 times 1 day, or like 10 minutes, 20 minutes, whatever. And then day by day, you're getting better. And of course, it's like having a streak on Duolingo. You you're like, oh my God, yeah, it's been so many days. And I think that's really, really cool, and helps a lot because that just like keeps it gamified, and I'm digging it. It works for me at least.
Oh, for me as well. I think I don't have anything else, bro.
No,
That's
I
the
think
pod.
that's all right, everybody. I hope you're having great goals already. If you need anything else, please leave a comment. Happy to share more. And yeah, catch you in the next episode. Peace.